Hi everyone, it's me, Krylios, Team Racing Productions MC and producer. And joining me today is Jose Barrios. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Certainly, it is our pleasure to have you here. So the way how I like to kick this off is just having our guests introduce themselves to our audience and letting them know a little bit about you. So let's start with that.
Sure. So my name is Jose Barrios, sometimes known as Joe also. I'm the president of the DC Latino Caucus, which I'm sure we'll be talking about today. I've lived in Washington, D.C. For the last 13 years, but I've been generally in the DMV for much, much longer than that. So this is pretty much my home now. By day, I do software systems engineering. And by night, I like to do civil rights activism and civic engagement and promoting political participation. So here we are.
Love that, love that, love that. So for anyone who may be watching and they've never heard of the DC Latino Caucus before.
For the last 13 years, but I've been generally in the DMV for much, much longer than that. So this is pretty much my home now. Is that on your end?
I think I'm hearing us back. I think I'm hearing us back. Let me just, because I was like, I didn't think he was talking. Okay, great. That's a little confusing. Yeah, so if anyone who's never heard of the DC Latino Caucus, what is it? Explain to them.
So the DC Latino Caucus is the premier organization for ensuring the participation, the political participation of Latinos at all levels of DC government. And so our primary mission is to empower Latinos and make sure that Latinos are always being heard by those in power, and to make sure that the needs of the community are being addressed. And so that means advocacy for issues that matter to us, and urging the DC Council and the mayor to adopt policies and legislation that are important to our community. And then during come election time, it also means helping to decide which candidates would be the best ones for meeting the needs of the Latino community. And so that's primarily what we do. And we've been around since, I think since at least the early 2000s, so it's been a long time. And the organization has grown over time. And so we continue that work.
Well, when it comes to, voting and really utilizing one's political power, it's one of the most important things an individual, who lives in a jurisdiction can do, really putting their voice out there to make a change for, their community, to see that community grow. And of course, that is so important for the Latino community here in Washington, D.C. And now you serve as the president of the DC Latino Caucus. So what is that like? How is it being the president of that? And what are some of those responsibilities or things that you're really, really focused on right now as you lead the DC Latino Caucus, and especially in an election year like this one?
Yeah, so it's really busy. And the Latino community has grown greatly in DC, especially over the last 10 years. If you look at the growth in the population that happened based on DC census data, from 2010 to 2020, more than 25% of the new residents that DC got were Latino. And so we're talking about about 20,000 new residents. And we believe that we were greatly undercounted because of all the issues and problems with the Trump administration trying to intimidate members of our community into not participating. And so that has had a knock-on effect in terms of amplifying our voices and needing to be heard. Because while our community has grown and we now represent 11% of the population in DC, we don't see ourselves reflected very well in government. We have never had a Latino council member. We've never had a Latino mayor. We have had the U.S. shadow representative, Franklin Garcia, who has been the highest elected Latino in local DC politics. But apart from that, we have not seen representation. So it is very important to us that we increase that representation. During times like now, during the election, where you have candidates making all kinds of promises and saying we're the best choice for council or for other office, it was important that those candidates come before the caucus and talk to members of our community about those issues that matter most to us. And so we had a whole process going from questionnaires that we sent out on Latino issues. We had a very well-attended meeting where almost all of the candidates attended and tried to earn our endorsement. And so we have endorsed some candidates in some of the races, and we did not endorse in other races because we did not feel any one candidate stood out sufficiently to gain majority endorsement. And so now we move from having endorsed to actually supporting these candidates, with money where we can, because most candidates are running on public financing, but also with door knocking, showing up, telling our friends and family that these are actually the best candidates for our community. So the work continues.
Certainly. And since we're in an election year, what are some of those issues that, directly affect the Latino community, those issues that you are looking at that is, that are important to the vote this year, that are, that influence your decisions about who to support, who to stand behind? Give me some of those issues that are just really important to the community.
Sure. So there are three topics that come up consistently as issues of concern for our community. The first, probably the biggest one, is affordable housing. Okay, the city has an enormous affordable housing crisis. A lot of what politicians pretend to talk about when it comes to affordable housing isn't really affordable housing, because they're talking about providing housing for people that might make 60 or 80% of the area's median income. But members of our community who are construction workers, who are police officers and firefighters, you're talking about closer to the 30% level of area median income, and politicians don't talk about that. We need more housing for those members of our community, and we push relentlessly, and we work with other organizations through the city to promote deeply affordable housing. So that's one issue. The second is ready, available access to healthcare. There are, programs in DC that, for example, provide healthcare for including undocumented immigrants, individuals that may not be able to obtain healthcare in other ways. But those programs have been traditionally very onerous in terms of signing up and then qualifying and then requalifying. I mean, there was a 6-month requalification requirement where you had to keep going in and so we're trying to make that more accessible, to members of our community, because it's important that everybody have access to affordable health care. And then the third thing that we look at a lot is education. There's a big gap between the number of brown students, Latino students, and often the Latino teachers. There are very few Latino teachers in comparison to the number of students. And so we're interested in pushing policies that are going to promote retention and retaining of high quality Latino teachers, which has been especially challenging because of the pandemic. The last thing that I would look at, which is kind of an overarching issue, is the issue of voting rights. Because anytime you have the ability to expand how people can vote or who can vote, that is going to expand Latino power. And two things we've been looking at, particularly are ranked choice voting, which I'm sure you've probably heard about on this show. We very strongly support ranked choice voting. That has put us at odds with, some other members of the community, but we really do think that is an avenue to increase representation by minorities and women. And so we very much promote ranked choice voting. The other legislation that has been pending in committee before the council is to allow permanent legal residents like green card holders voting rights in our local elections, because we have a lot of people in our community who may have a green card and they care about and they live in that community, but they can't vote. And so we have some politicians that are lukewarm at best to that. We're trying to nudge them in the direction of something that would greatly increase our Latino political voting power. So I would say those are the primary issues that animate us.
Certainly. And if you'd like to add, who are some of the candidates that you have endorsed, that the DC Latino Caucus has endorsed so far?
Sure. So we resoundingly endorsed Robert White for mayor, and it wasn't close. He got over 60% of the vote in the first. We had 2 rounds of voting. for our endorsements. We have many members who participated in endorsements, and he won a strong and resounding endorsement. And we believe that he is the champion on a lot of these issues that the Latino community really needs. His outreach to our community has been relentless. His campaign manager, Ms. Luz Martinez, is a member of our board, and he has demonstrated that ongoing commitment to outreach, which is really important. Brianne Nadeau in Ward 1 is an amazing champion. If there were a bat phone, she would have it. Between the Latino community and her office, she was always employing Latinos in her office. She's very in tune to what the Latino community needs, what we as an organization are advocating for, and that communication has been constant and ongoing, and it hasn't just been during the election year. It's been all the time. So she has also won a resounding endorsement. Charles Allen is not running challenged, but we endorse him nevertheless because we also think that he has been a powerful ally on a lot of the issues that we've been talking about, and he also earned a powerful endorsement. And then a somewhat divided, but we did endorse, but it was a lot closer, was for Eleanor Holmes Norton for the congressional delegate. Reverend Wendy Hamilton put on a very strong showing, but Ms. Norton happened to get just past that 51% vote for endorsement.
Awesome. And I just love to let our viewers know that you can see interviews with, I think everyone that you just mentioned, maybe except one, but here on this channel, you can see interviews with them. You can see what their campaign is about, see what they're running on, and really get a grasp of their personality and what they're giving right here on this channel, because we have the interviews with them there. And something that is so important is making sure that you are aware of the deadline dates when it comes to elections, when voting begins, and making sure that you are registered to vote before then. So I'd love to have Jose talk a little bit about that and the importance of everyone, keeping these things in mind and getting registered to vote.
Absolutely. If you haven't registered to vote, it's super easy. If you go to the DC Board of Elections website, dcboe.org, you can you can sign up to register to vote. There is an early voting, that will occur. Ballots will begin to get sent out on May 16th for any mail-in voting for all of the registered voters, actually. So you will have the option of mailing in a ballot. Those mail drop boxes will open on May 27th. So if you can't get to the polling station, if there's a box near your community where you can drop off your ballot, you can absolutely do that. And the early voting period actually begins in early June, on June 10th. And so if you do want to go to the ballots, there will be locations open around DC where you can go and vote at a time that is convenient to you. And then the actual primary election date is June 21st. And that will be, basically the big day in terms of, figuring out who our elected, victors are. Although there's a bit of a later deadline for any absentee ballots, but, we will probably know, on June 21st, who is going to be the victor in some of these very, very important races. It's absolutely imperative that people get out there and they make their voices heard. We are, coming out of a very difficult pandemic season. There's a lot of need in our community. There's a lot of issues of concern, and this is how Latinos and members of the community generally make their voices heard. If you don't vote, then, we deserve what we get, right? So it's absolutely important that we get out there. So please head out to register to vote as soon as possible.
Certainly. And you can go to headcount.org to check your status, pledge to vote, and register to vote. Once again, that's headcount.org to check your voter registration status and register to vote, and keep those deadlines in mind. Now, Jose, how can people find out more about the DC Latino Caucus, keep up with what you're doing, keep up with any updates, and, just follow to always be updated with everything?
Sure. So the easiest thing is on social media, DC Latino Caucus. Whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we're out there and we put out regular updates about what's going on. Just to do a quick plug, right now we are about to conduct board elections for our board. So we're looking for community leaders that might want to step up and help lead the Latino community for a 2-year term. And so if that is of interest to anybody listening, please come to the website, dclatinocaucus.org. There's more information there as well. That's the other way that you can learn more. Come to the website and sign up. You can just sign up for our newsletter if you want, or you can become a member. It's only $25, and that supports the work of the caucus and allows us to take our message forward. So please, if you believe in what the caucus does, if you believe in our mission, join us. And we value allies wherever we can find them.
Awesome. And we're going to have that website link in the description so our viewers can go ahead and click it and go there and sign up and everything. So we're going to have that there in the description. Jose,
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure getting to chat with you, learning more about the DC Latino Caucus, and getting everyone ready to vote in this vital election year. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for the work you do in our communities.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun to be here.
Thank you. Those watching, please follow Team Racine Productions at Team Racine on all forms of social media. Click around our YouTube channel and watch those candidate interviews and see who you're voting for come this election day. And of course, we want you all to like, comment, and subscribe. But most of all, thank you for watching. Bye, everyone.